All right, welcome into Flippin' the Mic. We are live on a Thursday night. It is March 25th, 2021. I am James Flippin. He is Mike Yancey of the Daily Stash, and we are getting after it here, getting ready for opening day. Looks like the roster is getting more or less finalized here for these New York Metropolitans. It does not look like there's going to be an extension for Francisco Lindor or one for Michael Conforto, but we do know, and how about this, Mike, that Matt Harvey is going to be making the Orioles roster.
Happy for him.
That's something to note as a Mets fan, right?
Easy to root for. I mean, the guy's arm literally fell off for us. So let's
Shout out to Harvey for making the roster. By the way, the weirdest thing with that, I could have sworn I read somewhere where he had like an oblique injury or something, and he was going to be out until May. But I guess that was wrong, or maybe he, didn't hurt it as badly as he thought he did, or that the team thought he did. I know Felix Hernandez, who's trying to reclaim his career in Baltimore, he did have some sort of elbow thing that he was dealing with. We also know that Vegas has put the over-under for the Mets at 90.5 wins. So Mike and I can talk about that. Seems that Dylan Betances will make the roster. And also our favorite, Joey Luchessi. Looks like he's a starter after Yamamoto has been sent down to the minor league camp. So, Mike, how are you?
I'm good, but not as good as you. Somebody got engaged recently, so congratulations officially.
Yeah, if you're bringing that up, that's absolutely right. This past Saturday, my longtime boyfriend, I proposed to him, and he said yes, which was not a surprise considering that we've been together for a long time and been discussing it and, kind of trying to figure out the right timing and all. You, as a married man, know well that it's, as much as anything, a financial discussion and a financial consideration. How much are we going to be able to afford the party that's now coming? But it was nice. It was a really nice day on Saturday, if you recall, not a cloud in the sky. If you know New Jersey, there's a spot up in West Orange called Eagle Rock Reservation, which kind of like overlooks the city, and on a clear day, you can see it.
In there.
That's where it went down. So it was very, very picturesque and very much in line with what Chris, my fiance, expected. So,
is it a weird word? Like you have to get used to saying the word, right?
Weird. Like I responded to, I said to a coworker, I emailed her because, don't see her anymore. Actually, I don't even know her beyond email exchange because she started after the pandemic or maybe like right as it hit or something like that. And so she was like, "Oh, how was your weekend? I was in the city. It was nice." And I said, "Oh, it was great. I got engaged to my boyfriend." And she was like, "Oh, wow, congratulations. You mean fiance?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, that's right." So it is an adjustment. You got to get used to it. But
absolutely. And I want to give my condolences to all the eligible bachelors out there that were holding out hope. It's no longer. He is officially off the market. So
officially, it's sorry to say, yes.
Other fish in the sea, my friends.
Definitely breaking a lot of hearts out there in Mets fan land, at least as far as podcasts go. But hey, what are you going to do? And we here, hope springs eternal with the spring and with words of engagement and weddings and flowers and all this beautiful stuff. We're getting ready for baseball season here. So
baseball is the most important one of all of those. We agree on that.
Well, the one thing I will say is that I had this thing that I want to do this season, and I think I talked about this on the podcast, where I want to watch the game on live stream with my fiance now. And the name of it was going to be watching the Mets with my gay boyfriend. Now I guess it's going to have to be watching the Mets with my gay friend is good to me. You know what I mean? I like that name, so maybe we'll keep that.
I should. It's funny because you said your fiance doesn't. I mean, he tries, but he doesn't have a ton of baseball knowledge. And my wife is similar. My wife is similar, and she wants to be part of it. So she asks the funniest questions. I bet you they're like cut from the same cloth, just in that way. It sounds similar.
Yeah. And you having seen some of my more salty moments, both on the podcast and obviously, via Twitter meltdown and so on and so forth. There's been times where, unshockingly, my boyfriend has experienced that. And, he'll say, like, he hates watching the Giants with me. You know what I mean? Because like I pace the floor. I ask a lot of questions. How can you call that play there? What kind of defense is this? You know what I mean? Like da. And I'm the same way when it comes to the Mets games for the most part. So yeah,
it's falling. Yeah,
it's not that far gone. I'm sure it's definitely a similar thing.
It sounds like a unique piece of content. I look forward to watching it and cracking up.
Yeah, and I think we're going to try to do it on Friday nights, so there'll probably be a decent amount of wine as well, that gets involved, and hopefully that adds to the excitement. And
you should get a song from like Robert Randolph, like he does for the Knicks on Friday nights. Gets a nice little beat in there.
Yeah, well, I
James on.
I got to figure something out from a production standpoint, because that'll definitely be a nice accoutrement to the whole.
Whoa, look at you whipping out the big words.
No, I couldn't be more excited. I think that for a lot of reasons on, many different levels, the season's kind of like, snuck up on me. I usually catch at least a few games on TV during spring training. I've really only seen like clips and kind of stuff like that. So I'm excited. I couldn't be more excited to finally see what's going to happen with this team and how it's all going to come together. And, obviously they have kind of laid out here how they're going to try to overcome the early challenges with the pitching staff and Carrasco being on the shelf and Syndergaard not being available. You alluded to the fact that not only is Luchessi looking like the fifth guy, but, Peterson's more or less going to be the fourth, which has, then Taijuan Walker in the, middle of the rotation, and Stroman as the 2 to DeGrom. So, it's almost go time, and you just kind of look forward to hopefully a full season of what we come to expect from DeGrom. Stroman is going to be his own story because he's got his whole career and financial security kind of riding on what kind of season he can put together in that respect. And probably more than anything, just staying healthy and going out there and pitching to what he's done in the past. And, a guy like Taijuan Walker takes on a higher level of importance given kind of where he slots in the whole equation. But I think more than anything, and we alluded to this the last time, this team's got to hit its way to prominence. You know what I mean? Like, we have every expectation that this should be a good dynamic lineup that's able to put numbers up on the board. And you haven't been able to say that many times in the past going into a Mets season.
There's not. Well, we've talked about this already. There's not an automatic out the lineup. I mean, what do you expect out of James McCann as a hitter? He had a big step up year for the White Sox last year. They were able to play Yasmani Grandal a lot at first because McCann was raking. But he's a guy you want to more focus on throwing out base runners, working with the pitching staff. Hit his 250 with 15 to 20 homers. Mets would take that out of the 8 slot, and and then right into the sunset. They just want a guy that could get to home plate, from catching that throw right field in less than 5 seconds, like it took Wilson Ramos. And Tomas Nido has his moments. I mean, he's a decent backup. He's if spring counted for real, he's another one of those guys that always hits in the spring, and you're like, huh. Well, that's why you have 4A guys throwing a fastball down the middle. You or I would get a hit. Probably not me, but nonetheless, I mean, the Mets. I think they're going to be fine. And you know what? I'm gonna make a bold statement right now. By the time opening day comes, Francisco Lindor will be extended. I really have a feeling.
Actually, you think they actually are going to get a deal done?
Well, they're talking. That's been reported on multiple fronts. I mean, there's been in the last year, there's been more long-term extensions signed in baseball that we've seen. The most recent being, I believe it was Lance McCullers of the Astros got a more than 15 a year, which I thought was mind-blowing. I mean, the guy's talented, but when has he ever thrown 6 innings consistently?
Though, so it's interesting you bring this up because I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine who's a Mets fan. Just kind of randomly, I knew I was doing the show today, so I took note of the conversation. But he was calling me and saying, and he's a little bit of a troll, but he was like, "I'm so happy the Mets haven't extended Lindor. I do not want to give him big money." And I'm like, why? He's so convinced that he's going to fall off the end of the earth because he's not 23 years old, I guess, or whatever. And I said, it's it just doesn't really stand to reason that this is a guy who's going to completely fall apart from all the different aspects of value that he brings. Even if for some reason his power numbers maybe don't ever, replicate kind of what he did a couple years ago or something like that. I don't know. But, this is a guy who plays a Gold Glove level shortstop, brings speed and dynamicism to your lineup, has shown the ability to hit for extra base pop, and is kind of a franchise player type in his other intangibles. Like he's gotten rave reviews for his leadership during his time in Cleveland, and I think it was even Trevor Bauer who said, he immediately held me accountable when he had that temper tantrum moment where he pegged the ball out into the center field. He threw it over the fence and center field.
Yeah, I remember that.
Jacobs Field or whatever, Progressive Field, I should say. So, I think.
Did he not to cut you off, did he do that as an Indian or a Red? It was an Indian still?
That was when he was an Indian. I think he actually got traded not long after that. I think that was the final straw for everything that was kind of going on between him and whatever it was with Cleveland, or if it was just him personally at that moment. But, my point being, I think there's a lot of reasons to keep Lindor. Plus, if I'm him, and I know it's not really necessarily him, but more his agents and his team and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to see this drag out beyond opening day. And it's not just about, I don't want to negotiate in season and all this kind of stuff. You're playing a game of Russian roulette there. You know what I mean? If Seager resigns, if Story resigns, if some of these guys don't get the free agency, or even if they do, you're putting yourself in a position that I just don't know why you would want to do that. You know what I mean? All things considered, the major league contracts are guaranteed. You're getting every single penny that you sign for on the dotted line. Is it really that much more important to go into the free agency and say, I need to get, 25 million more on the number that it was going to finally be, or something like that? A guy like Conforto, I can actually understand it more, because I think that he's coming into his own as a player. He's really ascending. He's got that first round pedigree. He's a guy who's shown a lot already. And I don't necessarily know how much competition he's going to have in the marketplace, being a corner outfielder, run producer, as opposed to everything kind of Conforto's running into just at the wrong time, or Lindor at the wrong time with the market. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Lindor to re-sign. I don't know if he's going to, and I don't know, have there been any rumors as far as what it's going to be? Is it 7 years? Is it, is there?
It's probably going to be another one of those ridiculous 7, 8, 9-year contracts, probably at 30. I
don't even have any problem with that. The other thing is, you mentioned the McCullers thing. Look, depending on how many years out you push all this, it starts to mean less and less, right? We see it every year with the quarterbacks in the NFL and the contracts that they sign. All right, fine. Tear up the record books, because as the money just continues to grow in everything, and, I guess at some level, exponentially, it's going to slow in professional sports or whatever, but there's no reason to expect that any of these particular contracts are going to significantly hamstring the Mets, and certainly not the Cohen Mets, over those 10 years or whatever it may be. Even if he kind of stinks his last two, or if you kind of don't play him much the last two, or he's sitting somewhere rehabbing.
Yeah. Well, I also think another thing to consider is the Mets are in a position where no other team is. And what I mean is, if he wanted to, Cohen could actually front load the deal. He could do more money up for kind of like Trevor Bauer's contract. I'm not in love with 1 million opt-outs. I hope that's not what they do.
Yeah.
But if they do, let's say they do a 9-year deal or 8-year deal, and they opt out after 4, if that's what he wants, fine. But I don't want opt out after 1, 2, 3, 6, like that. But they could give him 40 to 45 the first 2 years, and then slowly bring it down. And then all of a sudden, when those bad years come along, he's only counting 20 something against the cap, or against the not the cap, but their salary. Going towards a salary tax threshold. Now, again, they'd probably have to do some maneuvering to make that work, move some money and stuff. And the other thing to consider is, they're probably going to want to add money, because in my mind, I was listening to Sirius earlier today. I was listening to Casey Sturm and I think it's Spielborg's that show in the middle of the day. I'm sure I know you listen to XM plenty.
Yeah.
And I forget what they call that show, but anyway, not important. But they were talking about right now, we're probably looking at the Dodgers in the West and the Padres probably one of the wild cards. Then in the Central, you have probably either Cardinals or Brewers. Mostly, I would go Brewers. That's my opinion. And then in the East, it's probably the Mets and Braves. And the Nationals, if healthy, and the Phillies, if healthy, could make some noise. But so what the Mets, my point being, the Mets are probably going to be in a position where they might need to add to make up the difference in a tight race.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to be playing meaningful baseball as the deadline approaches. I would love if it's not meaningful, meaning that the Mets ran away with it. But Atlanta's got so much young talent that somehow they're already locked up forever. So we're going to be staring at Acuna, Albies, Freeman forever. But Freeman, who I feel like is a reincarnated Chipper Jones.
Yeah,
he really did fill that void right away. And but so this year the Mets might add. So we'll see what happens. But I would love it if they were able to take. I do also believe in like taking care of your own. And Conforto is a tough guy to replace. That would be a big loss if he left after the year. But
I totally agree. I wouldn't want to see him go. I think I'm just looking at it more from the perspective of not so much me, but just kind of like reading the tea leaves and looking at what the market is or isn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I don't know as much about what Conforto does face if he were to go out in the free agency. I don't know who's coming up and like who's going to be the comparable guys on the free agent market or whatever. But I just feel like, and the Boris, factor notwithstanding, that's obviously a part of it. I just have a hard time imagining him re-signing. But Lindor, yeah, I think you could be onto something there. I definitely think that they could get that done before the season starts. I think it would be smart for him to do it. And I think that, considering he's never played I'm not saying he's going to have any problems. I don't think he will. But considering he's never played in front of the New York fans, in front of the New York media, in front of all that kind of stuff, I would think he'd want to take the pressure off going into this particular season. You know what I mean? Now, maybe different. I'm not him. I don't know him. Maybe he's a guy who like lives for that kind of juice and that kind of pressure where his financial, security and his family's financial security for generations to come is going to be on line. Maybe that's something he likes.
Well, let's not forget this guy's making $20 million this year. So it's not like he's shopping at Dollar Tree.
No, not. And I don't know how much that stuff does or doesn't hang over guys' heads. I mean, obviously, and you do fantasy, so it's not a shock for you to hear somebody say contract year, whatever it may be. And that kind of goes across several different sports. But there's also been plenty of guys who played crappy in their contract year.
Yeah, sure. It's funny. I have a funny thing to share, by the way, speaking of fantasy. I knew we were going to go on a tangent. Here's mine. So yesterday, I traded Pete Alonso in my because I got
the same team, right?
I have DeGrom, and I turned down a trade earlier in the offseason that included Christian Yelich for DeGrom. It was Christian Yelich, and it was like maybe Joey Gallo, or it was a lower player on the guy's team I wouldn't have kept. So I countered asking for Kyle Tucker, who I love, and he hit like third. He's a up and comer, and he turned me down, and then it just fizzled. But it would take the moon for DeGrom, so I traded Alonso. I have to give my dad credit for this because I traded Alonso for Corey Seager and Tyler Glasnow and a high draft pick.
Okay.
So I'm in a league. I'm actually in another, I told you, a 30-team league, and they're all like, I would have traded Alonso for Seager straight up. Yeah. So everybody's saying I did great in that deal.
Yeah.
And so I told my dad that I'm really sad that I traded Alonso, and he goes, "So you're Alonso Mourning."
I
knew you'd like that.
I have to say that may be one of the best and one of the most perfectly executed dad jokes I've ever heard of or seen, because it hits on every single level.
It does. And you know what? My initial reaction was I was so angry I didn't come up with it first. I was like, damn you, you son of a.
Yeah.
But he definitely had a good one. So I had to give him credit. And I actually have a chat going with him and two of his best friends that I gave him credit right away and sent it to them.
And actually, somewhat apropos of nothing, but at the same time, we're talking about being in Alonzo Mourning, but Alonzo Mourning on the bench when he sort of rationalizes whatever it is.
That's used all the time.
That's such
where he's like, well, it's like the Knicks not making a trade at the deadline today. Most people are okay with it. I'm one of them.
I mean, I don't know. I would have been excited, I guess, to see them swing a trade for. I don't know. I personally, one of the guys that definitely intrigued me was Lonzo Ball, but
yeah, agreed.
Free agent, so I don't know how much sense it makes to give up.
He's actually not a free agent.
Oh, he's not.
No, they're saying that the Knicks might explore a trade in the offseason. So
where did I get that confused? Because I thought that
it might be maybe he is. He might be, in the NBA there's like restricted where you can match in the beginning, like so like kind of like the NHL. So maybe they would do a sign-in trade or something like that to make the money work.
They do that in the NBA, don't they? The sign-in trade is a real factor.
So, but they have a lot of money. They have 2 first-round picks next year. Thank you, Dallas. And so right at the wave.
Now, how Dallas? I know at the beginning of the year was not doing well. Are they still?
Yeah, they turned it around. They're in the lower half of the first round. The Knicks pick right now, I think, would be higher.
Damn.
I know every day we're rooting for them to lose, but they do have, the Dallas and them scoring on international players is ridiculous. First they get Nowitzki, and then they get Luka Doncic, who's amazing. I mean, unfair. And although I hate Porzingis, I mean, as most Knicks fans do.
Absolutely.
But I'm loving the camaraderie with the current team. They're fiery. They, a lot of young, interesting players. So I think they're starting to become a destination. Not really, maybe even stopping becoming a laughing stock. Possibly.
I definitely think they're making moves towards not being of laughing stock status. Like, in other words, I think they need to sort of like firmly plant their feet there to kind of officially get past it. But yeah, man, I mean, look, I guess
they're changing the culture. One of the most cliche phrases in sports. Changing the culture.
It is, of course, a huge cliche. But I mean, at the same time, you talk about the fact that they brought in Leon Rose and Worldwide West, and even their GM who's been there for a little bit longer. I don't know. It seems like they've got a little bit of momentum. You know what I mean? Like, they were so awful as an organization for so long. Just the fact that they and look, I shouldn't say always, because I think Donnie Walsh had some things going on, and then who knows what happened there. He probably refused to go see Dolan's band play or something like that, and then he wasn't brought back.
Did you see the story came out today with Phil Jackson talking about all the people that wronged him? I refused to click the link. I was like, I'm not getting in there. He finally opened up at about his time. He blamed like Carmelo Anthony. He blamed like Knicks management. I saw it. All I saw was the teaser in the tweet, and I'm like, I'm not giving this guy 2 minutes of my time.
What did he? I mean, yeah, to your point,
it was Daily News. If you want to search for it later, but it was just like, I'm not entertaining this.
Yeah.
So let me. So we covered a lot last week in terms of previewing the team and stuff like that. Looks like we're probably going to have a second lefty in the pen with Montgomery now that Hunter's gone.
That Montgomery, I guess, is going to make the roster. So
it surely seems that way. It looks like Tarpley's going down. They have a couple guys. Gesellman's probably going to go down because he has options.
Which I hate to, I never want to dance on anybody's grave or celebrate. I'm sorry that he's going to have to go to Syracuse or whatever, but I personally won't lose any sleep over the fact that I'm not going to watch Gesellman anymore.
Oh, you will. Watch when Betances has a sore elbow and goes on the 10-day IL. He'll probably be one of
at that point. You're right, but I don't know, like that. It's just so frustrating because Gesellman was so great that first year when he came up and he busted his arm and couldn't hit, but he was still pitching his ass off, and the tattoos and the long hair, just like everybody had on the pitching staff back then. But man, he is just, something about him. I don't know. It's just I'm
not a fan.
Betances not necessarily make the club also in that respect, but beggars can't be choosers.
Right, and there's 6 million reasons why they're going to give him every chance.
Right, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is. And now, in terms of, I don't think Pete looks locked in. I don't know if you've seen a lot of clips, but another reason. I mean, obviously, I'm rooting for him no matter what. But he couldn't have had a better spring.
Yeah,
and I mean, Conforto had a great spring. Lindor is having a great spring. It's hard to see a flaw offensively right now in this team, and if obviously day one DeGrom, I'm going to be so pumped. They're lining him up to first day of the season. Now let me ask you a question. When the Los Angeles Dodgers come to Citi Field, we're assuming some sort of crowd's there. How loud is the boo if Trevor Bauer is on the
mound? It probably depends, I guess. I would say what time of year it is, how big of a crowd is there. And I just don't know, like, how, for example, right? It's when you go to the game, it's a mix of a crowd. Like, the crowd is not all just people that are on Twitter, right? It's not all people ages 20 to 45 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So how much are people really in tune with all that stuff?
I think they are.
Nice. The fact that he kind of made it seem like he was going to come, the apology after the fact and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I just don't know how much common knowledge that is. Because, like, to me, the weird thing about Trevor Bauer is, and I'm not even having to go, like, I'm not trying to talk crap. He's kind of like, he's been around for a while, right? He was a very good pitcher for the Indians for a while. And he was, maybe he never quite reached the level of his draft status for a while or something. He's kind of come on more late as a pitcher. It's just bizarre to me, like, how much he's had that meteoric rise. It's largely through social media, I think, in terms of his status and his standing, in terms of, like, his popularity and aware of him throughout the game.
It's also got him in trouble from time to time because of what's been interpreted as harassment and stuff as well. So
no question about it. And again, I still maintain that very, very good pitcher, but he kicked the absolute crap out of a terrible division last year. He absolutely shoved it to the Pirates, and the rest of the division kind of had a down year as well, especially offensively. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a very loud boo. I would be shocked if it was anything but I just don't know how much people really care about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be like a Chase Utley level boo.
No, or a oh God, what was his name? I'm thinking about the guy in the Marlins that caught David Wright. The guy that caught David Wright's pop up.
Yeah,
Pete O'Brien.
Yes, Pete O'Brien.
I was at that game.
Yeah.
And, now, in terms of go back to Harvey. So the Orioles are coming to town this year for a couple games. So if Harvey, on the other hand, comes in, I think he gets a standing ovation.
I think he would get a huge ovation. Yeah. I think that the fan base never really lost its love affair with Matt Harvey. I think that the stuff that some of the organization people got frustrated with, most Met fans, especially ones raised on, like, 1986 fandom, couldn't give a shit less about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care if he was going out to clubs and indulging in some extracurricular activities and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Like, who am I to judge? Obviously you worry when they don't show up the next day or something like that. That takes it a little bit far. But yeah, I think that Harvey would just get an absolute, a pop to correlate to your wrestling fandom. It would be quite a pop if Harvey was getting a start one of those games at Citi Field.
Absolutely. Now, I heard another thing. Mike Piazza was in camp, and they were talking to him, and they asked him if he thought any other numbers should be retired. And he alluded to the fact that he said some numbers may be added this year.
I read that.
So let's speculate a little bit.
Okay,
So
how many do you?
I just pulled up the retired numbers. I should know this by heart. Obviously, Piazza, Jackie Robinson, Seaver,
Yep. Yep.
Hodges, and Stengel. So those 5.
Yep.
So those 5 are the numbers. So one of the first names that comes to my head, I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Big heart and soul guy. Offense, always doing his best to try to piss off the opponent. My first thought is Gary Carter.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think you're absolutely right. I think that they would do that. I think that it would mean a lot to his family. I think it would mean a lot to the Mets fans who they loved Gary Carter for all the reasons he pissed off the opposition. And my father always said that as good as that mid-'80s team was, and a lot of fanfare for guys like Keith Hernandez, a lot of fanfare for obviously Doc and Straw. He said, Carter was the guy that kind of took it to the next level. And obviously it wasn't just his talent, and he's a Hall of Famer and put up absolutely incredible numbers offensively for a catcher, especially during his years in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the heart and soul guy, like you said. And he was the guy that, I know my father always loved Carter, and I grew up playing catcher. So and being a huge Todd Hundley fan and then a Piazza fan. So like, I always kind of key in on the Mets catchers, you know what I mean? And the fact that he got that base hit to get the rally started in Game 6 of the 86 World Series, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of reasons why, nobody should wear 8 again in a Mets uniform. But
that's my dad always brings up December 10th. That's the day they traded for him in 1984. So that was like
where he had just like built like a big house in Montreal or something like that.
Yeah. And
He
they
was
got him 4 players. I'm pulling it up. 4 players: Hubie Brooks, Mike Fitzgerald, Herm Winningham, and Floyd Humans. That was the return. So I definitely think that he would be a great first of that. So now, before I give you the floor to pick one, remember they had announced Jerry Koosman before COVID hit? That Jerry Koosman was going to be added, and then kind of stopped. So I wonder if that's just going to be put right back on the table.
Okay. Interesting.
Because Koosman was an interesting choice to me, not because of talent, but Koosman got in trouble. He was in trouble. I think he had this whole thing where like tax evasion and all sorts of stuff. But I remember he had a lot of legal issues.
Yeah, that's right. I couldn't quite put my finger on when you started to say that. I was like, yeah, wasn't it something with like money or like fraud? But yeah, you're right.
It was interesting to me. I mean, the Mets would obviously never pay attention to that, but a reporter probably would ask, like, did you think of that before? Blah, 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 blah. So, like, imagine if they did anything to honor Lenny Dykstra, what he would probably say if a microphone was given to him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that wouldn't.
I don't think he's part of the same company. No offense. But he was a Met, but he wasn't that level. So let me ask, now that we get to that point, so let's assume, let's forget Koosman, because we'll assume that he'll probably be part of the group. So who would be your next guy? Maybe if you could think of a more like current, like not current, but maybe in the last 20, 30 years.
Well, I mean, leaving out the obvious one, you mean?
Well, number 5, you mean?
Because that's eventually going to happen.
Yeah, that might happen this year. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So I mean, like, just leaving that out. I don't know. I mean, and I know you're saying to move off the 80s team.
You don't have to. You could. I mean, I'm not holding a gun to your head.
No, I'm just saying, like, I've long felt that any of the 16, 17, 18 you could make a case for. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can make a case for Doc. I think you can make a case for Keith. And I think you can make a case for Darryl. I really do. I mean, I think that Darryl Strawberry was basically David Wright in terms of the offensive record books before David Wright came along. Doc was so incredibly dominant the first few years in the league. Both of them obviously World Series champions. both of them kind of like faces of an era to an extent. I think you can make the case for both of them. And I know that they've had their demons.
Both World Series champions as both Mets and Yankees. Blech.
That's true. That's true. And of course, that Doc threw the no-hitter with the Yankees always just absolutely drives me.
So did David Cohn.
Yeah, right. Him too. But I mean, and then Hernandez is just on the front of, having been kind of more or less the captain of that team, but also, what he's done as a broadcaster. You know what I mean? The fact that he's such a mascot for the team as a human being to an extent. I think you could definitely make the case that Keith could be deserving of that. But the only other person that I could kind of think of, and I just don't think it necessarily rises. Actually, you know what? I was gonna say Edgardo Alfonso, and then just say
it was in my head. I think he's
rises. What about Al Leiter?
No, I think honestly, if you're not going to do Alfonso, you're not going to do Leiter, because I think they're similar levels.
Leiter
and you know what? I think John Franco is probably in that group.
Yeah, but Franco, and I love Johnny Franco too, but it's just like, no, he wasn't. You still have to have it at the level of, and again, because the Mets are not the Yankees, right? And if you want to take that as a shot across the bow, so be it. The Yankees, it's like, you hit 250 for us. We get 1 year when we won a championship, so we're going to retire your number now.
They're going to put like, Brian Bowringer in the.
Yeah, they're being like numbers now. Like they're going to be like, like in 20 years, they're going to be wearing like 106B in the back of the jersey or something.
And they're going to have to just extend the field back for more room for Monument Park.
Yeah. Monument Park is actually, because probably in the future with like, super HD virtual reality TV and stuff, nobody will go to the games anyway.
Please come as we induct Chad Curtis into Monument Park.
Yeah. Yeah, Brett Gardner's going out there. So,
Graham Lloyd or somebody like that,
Exactly.
They're going to start putting
it's still got to rise to that level of being like a Seaver, a Piazza, obviously. Hodges and Stengel made their own impact. I don't know if you would think a certain type of way about Davey Johnson. You know what I mean? Like he had his fallout with the organization, so that kind of made it never really an option in that respect.
I'm gonna ramble again. So we were just saying Graham Lloyd just made me think of something. So do you remember the Mets traded Pedro Feliciano to the Yankees, although he never threw a pitch as a Yankee because he got hurt?
Did they actually trade Pedro Feliciano, or was he signed?
No. He was. You're right. He was signed as a free agent, and the Mets got a compensatory pick.
Yeah,
which they used to sign to draft Michael Fulmer, who they traded for Yoenis Cespedes.
Okay, interesting. So
Pedro Feliciano. Thank you for 2015.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is amazing, and I love stuff like that. I mean, again, we're going in a million different random directions, and that's fine.
That's okay.
There's no games
less organized today. That's okay.
There's no games to talk about. Sue me. You know what I mean? But the thing that always made me laugh about that kind of thing is like where Bobby Bonilla, for example, everybody still loves to get on the Mets for this whole Bobby Bonilla day, and the fact that they set up an annuity that paid him off as opposed to whatever money they owed him in 1998 or whatever the hell it was, because they worked that out with Bonilla. They had enough money to sign Mike Hampton. Or trade for Mike Hampton or whatever it was. They let him go after the 1 year because he liked the school system in Colorado.
Right.
And then the compensatory pick that they got for him turned into. So everybody needs to shut the F up about the stupid Bobby Bonilla day. I hate the Bobby Bonilla day. Do you know how many have those annuities out there?
The Nationals live off that. They're big on deferrals.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of
are we going to have a Max Scherzer day in 30 years? Something like that?
I think the Nationals, if they get Juan Soto to agree to a contract extension, they're going to be paying him until you and I are in our 80s.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they want to do it and the player looks at it like, more security for me and I like the way it works, then, so be it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The whole thing with Bobby Bonilla and then the Bobby Bonilla day, it always rubbed me the wrong way. It got us David Wright, damn it.
Yeah, so it all worked out in the end.
Exactly.
But I guess in terms of the retired players, it's one thing I was also thinking about, and this isn't about retiring players. I wish the Mets would do more, and maybe they will under Cohen, to honor players that had even brief impacts on the team.
Mm.
Like there are players in history that may have spent 2 or 3 years as a Met, or even one big year as a Met, that really left a profound impact. And the first guy I think of, well, there's two. The one who was the better player was John Olerud. John
Mhm.
Olerud was maybe one of the top 5 best hitters the Mets have ever had,
Yeah.
pure hitters.
Does he
And
still have the highest batting average for them in a given year?
I believe so, or was it? I think it is. But he just was an unbelievable. I remember that one streak. He got on base something like 10, 11 straight plate appearances.
Yeah, yeah, he was
It was crazy. And then
yeah.
the best year that people I feel like never talk about was Bernard Gilkey. Bernard Gilkey had an insane season.
Can I tell you something? And hopefully by the general reaction in my voice and also in the way that I'm reacting on screen right now, I couldn't agree with you more. That's who I was going to bring up. I was going to say, can we get some love for Bernard Gilkey? You know what I mean? Like that was my back in the day.
The guy lost the ball in the lights because the spaceship was coming over from Men in Black
overhead. He lost the ball on the lights. It was tough at Shea Stadium. The glare, the most of the time the planes go overhead. You don't notice them. This time it was all low. He's freaked out. You know what I mean? It wasn't his fault.
I probably would have let the ball hit me in the head too. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's true. But Bernard Gilkey was great. Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to see all those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Like, what's Bernard Gilkey up to? What's Ray Ordonez up to? Todd Hundley. Can we get some love for Todd Hundley?
He was I cried when they got rid of him.
Yeah, it was like, Mike Piazza comes in, everybody's excited. I was excited too, but then they're like, Todd Hundley, you can play left field, right? Yeah, you can play left field. And then no, he couldn't.
All right, here it is. You ready? 1996, Bernard Gilkey stats. He had 571 at bats. He hit 317 with a 393 on base. 30 home runs, 117 RBIs, 44 doubles.
Beast.
Yep.
Yeah, no, he beasted that year.
I'm looking at Baseball Reference. He received MVP votes that year, as he should have. Although the team wasn't very good, but still.
Yeah.
That was not a good time in Mets history.
No, it was not. And the one name that I did not bring up in terms of checking in on guys from back then, because it always bothered me that he got a key hit in the 2000 World Series, was Jose Vizcaino.
Oh,
would have liked to have checked it. I would have liked to have checked in on Jose Vizcaino, but again, he got that key hit in the rally that ended up for the Yankees. So screw you.
Let's be honest. The better team won that World Series. It's true. In terms of talent, pure talent, the Yankees were definitely the more talented team.
Yeah, I think that the Mets were always going to be. It was always going to be a struggle for them to win that, but
and things worked out in their favor.
Game one.
There were a couple of upsets in that playoffs that led the Mets down quite the easy path in terms of getting to the World Series. Nobody thought they were getting through. I mean, they didn't have to go. I'd have to, but I remember the higher. There were a couple upsets, so they got to play. They beat, what was it, Arizona?
Yeah,
San Francisco.
They didn't have to go through the Braves, obviously.
Yeah, the Braves got knocked out early. Yeah. So, and it was was it Arizona, San Francisco, and
it was Arizona, Arizona, San Francisco, and St. Louis.
St. Louis, right? Although St. Louis got their revenge in 2006. Ugh.
Right, exactly.
That's like Matt, the guy that I co-formed the stash with. He doesn't co-own it anymore. He does not hold the Andy Chavez catch in any high esteem because all he says is they lost. That's it. If they would have won the game, big difference. The
thing that sucks the most about that, and we could spend all night crying over spilled milk when it comes to the Mets and stuff like that. But the thing that sucks about that is that Chavez came up the next inning with a chance to get the hit that would have brought the runs home, and
down.
He didn't get it done. I think he tapped out to the pitcher or something like that. But that's the kind of thing where it's like, this is it. You know what I mean? He made the catch. He's up now with a key chance. He's going to get the hit. You know what I mean? And he didn't. And that's kind of when you were like,
and people give a lot of flack to Carlos Beltran for taking that curveball. That was a wicked curveball. Like, half the league would have froze on it. Let's be real. That, and I don't know how you're going to feel about what I'm about to say. Carlos Beltran, that's another name. That's another number that might be up there one day.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. And I've buried my damage, the damage emotionally that, and obviously so much happened from there with the whole coronavirus thing, but I'm still upset over the fact that Beltran never got his chance to manage the team. I was very excited about that hire. I'm a huge Beltran guy.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that he is hated or not appreciated for what he did as a Met. The fact that he felt like he had unfinished business with the franchise, I felt like that was true as well. I was really, really excited about him getting a chance. And I feel like it was such bullshit that he got like basically made into the sacrificial lamb for the Houston Astros thing just because he wasn't a member of the players union anymore. You know what I mean? Like
look now, Alex Cora and AJ Hinch both have jobs,
which is such a joke. That is just such an absolute joke to me.
And the Mets will never hire him again because they had him and had to get rid of him.
And that's just such a crime. Like, why? I mean, like the Red Sox clearly brought back Cora.
You know, it's funny. The Red Sox investigation lasted seemingly forever, and it's kind of they got a slap on the wrist. It's like they went ahead and got rid of Cora preemptively, and then it seemed obvious that when his suspension was up, he'd be back. The Astros couldn't bring Hinch back, but the Tigers were like, "Hey, a good manager, we'll take him."
And it's just like, look, I don't have anything against Luis Rojas. I mean, I hope Luis Rojas does well, and I wasn't in love with Luis Rojas last year, but I mean, whatever, we'll see what happens. And managers sometimes get a little overrated or whatever, their impact maybe.
Hey, he's part of that Alou family. Pretty good lineage there.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm excited about that. I think that, he could definitely grow into something significant, but
right.
Beltran was such a smart player, man. And he from what we had heard about the end of his career with his time in the Bronx and with Texas and with Houston.
Yeah, he was always like the brainchild. He was.
Yeah. What, you're saying he was the brainchild behind the camera?
No, I'm not meaning that. He was just a very smart player. There was a lot of wisdom there.
Yeah.
And so what you're telling me is you feel like the way this whole situation is handled is kind of trashy? Is that what you're telling me? I'm sorry.
I think that the whole situation.
You didn't catch.
You in the Alonzo Mourning. I'm in a state of Alonzo Mourning over that joke right now.
Oh man. Trashy.
No, seriously though, I do have a lot of. I missed your joke because I'm like so legitimately angry and upset still over the whole Beltran thing, and I put it out of my mind. I totally forgot about it because everything about baseball last year, before they actually started playing in games, then obviously that's its own problem. Just really pissed me off. All the labor negotiations, like during the whole pandemic thing, and like making it about money and how much money are we going to get and all this kind of stuff. And then obviously the fact that Beltran got canned over something that I think he took the blame for when it really wasn't. It shouldn't have been him, or maybe it shouldn't have only been him that took the blame. Yeah, it bothered me. But anyway, what are you going to do? I'm sure once the games start again, I won't be thinking about Beltran and his failed managerial career that wasn't.
No.
But, so some other notes before we close up shop for the day and for the week. The Mets, I saw this on SNY.com, so I don't know if it's like the standard Vegas number or not, but their over-under, I guess, is 90.5 games. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm not going to guess exactly because it's impossible. They can't win half a game. I think it's fair. I would expect, my gut is right around 92, 93. So I'll take the over. I think, like I alluded to earlier, I think they're in for a fight. I think the old Mets-Braves rivalry is really going to push up again, and I love it. I mean, those Chipper and Brian Jordan and Fred McGriff and, those those Javi Lopez, and then the pitching. Don't get me started with that. You remember how Javi Lopez used to sit like 6 inches off the outside corner, and they would give him that call?
Yeah.
Those rivalries, and then John Rocker and all that. I mean, I feel like baseball has kind of in a lot of ways become like a good old boys club, like everybody's friendly and stuff like that. I could see it getting a little bit like turning the clock back a little bit with these teams being good now, both being really good.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and again, I think the Braves are a team now with a young core that's not as young, right, as it maybe once had been, and they probably start to expect that success.
Yeah, sure.
Feel like that division is entitled to them, that type of thing. And the Mets are, a team that has a lot of confidence, and I think is like slowly put things together the right way, and for other reasons now has a lot of expectation that comes along with it. So
yeah, and starts at the top. It really does start at the top. And the Mets also have a couple of pieces that if they step up really into their own, I mean, we talk about McNeil, we talk about Alonso, we talk about Lindor and so forth. I mean, if a guy like JD Davis steps forward again offensively and Dominic Smith gets better. I mean, Dominic Smith had a damn good year last year. If you're talking about guys like that hitting like 6th and 7th or 5th and 6th and whatnot, I mean, this lineup is going to exhaust pitchers. They do have a couple guys that strike out a lot, but overall they have a lot of guys that work it. And again, they also have options if these guys don't perform. I mean, guys like VR, who's had good years in the past, and even Luis Guillorme. I mean, it would not surprise me if JD struggles if Guillorme took his job. And that would, I mean, look at the spring. He had a 22 pitch at bat already. And I mean, you know what that does to a pitcher? One inning of that totally changes the script. The guy's not going more than 5 innings. And that changes the whole, look at last year or previous years when the Nationals and the Phillies had terrible bullpens.
Right.
If you take a starter, say you take Corbin or you take Nola out after 5 innings, and then you're looking at their crappy bullpens. I mean, they're both better this year.
Right.
Projected to be, you never know. Bullpens are such a crapshoot.
Yeah.
That changes the whole course of the game. And then you tire out a bullpen, and then the next day the pitcher has to go long. So, having a guy like that just puts the ball in play, it totally changes everything. So
no, and we've talked about Guillorme before. I mean, he's so good defensively too that you potentially live with a guy like that, even if he isn't going to hit as much as. And look, I feel like he's benefiting a little bit right now from the whole in the best shape of his life type thing that comes out of spring training. Everybody said like, oh, this is a guy who's really learned to use his hands more, and he's showing more pop, and I could see him hitting for more extra base and all this kind of stuff. I still feel like he's a guy who profiles to me as like more of like a Ruben Tejada type hitter, but that's fine. I mean, again, if you have a guy who
there's a place for that, there's 100% a place for that, and it's valuable.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't have any problem with it. I think that the fact that he's also on the opposite side of the plate from Davis is pretty nice in that respect. Maybe he's coming into games late or something like that. So yeah, we'll see. I'm just excited to see them get it started. You know what I mean? Like, I think that more than anything, you want to see how the team starts to take shape. You want to see how the roles in the bullpen start to get established. How well is Rojas getting a feel for that kind of thing? How well are these how much are these starting pitchers going to hold up over the course of the season? You know what I mean? There's a lot of chatter and a lot of talk just baseball wide over what it's going to be like for these guys coming back from having thrown. How many innings did they throw last year? I don't even know, like 60.
Yeah, and it's not even just pitchers. There's already been like a flurry of injuries of guys that just in spring that are already out. The Mets, it's been pretty controlled. I mean, you had Syndergaard who was already down. Now you have Carrasco, Jose Martinez, if you're counting on him for any kind of contribution.
And that was all
obviously Lugo. But like earlier today, there was a big one in baseball with Eloy Jimenez, tore his pec. So he was supposed to be a big part of that White Sox team, and now he's out 5 to 6 months.
Yep.
So I mean, that's a big thing. And Juan Soto left the game today, but the Nationals said it was minor. And he's actually also on that fantasy team. Call me a traitor if you want, but of course you want the best players in baseball.
Yeah,
but that's a nice 1-2 punch with Soto and DeGrom, right?
That's for sure. Yeah, a lot worse than that.
So let me ask you, I guess let's close on this topic. And I don't think we've talked too much about these guys.
By the way, I don't want to cut you off. Please do remember what you're going to say. Don't.
I'm going to try. Go for it.
But I still think Acuna is better than Soto.
I respectfully disagree. Well, fantasy baseball, Soto. You're talking about overall as just the player?
Because you're saying Soto is such a better fielder or whatever?
No, disagree. Acuna is the better fielder by a mile.
Oh, he's a better fielder?
Yes, and Acuna also plays center field, or he plays the corners too. But Soto is improving defensively, but he gets on base like insane. So he's more valuable fantasy commodity. In the league, I'm in on base percentage as a category. So
I just think Acuna is a better player. That's all I know.
Yeah. Or as a pure baseball player, it's close. But in fantasy, it's Soto by a mile.
Yeah.
He's the number one pick, but like they keep all those metrics and stuff. So, but my point I was going to make, and I'm very surprised at myself for remembering Bud Light Seltzer, huh? You like that?
I would never buy it, but somebody left here after we had a party over the weekend, and it's okay. It's all right. I have this seltzer. I'm not necessarily a huge seltzer guy, but the one that I do like is this. It's called High Point seltzer. It's from it's some place it's a brewery or whatever it's called in New York, actually, somewhere in upstate. But yeah, High Point is actually very good.
That's interesting. Okay, so I'm not forgetting it. So who do you think has a bigger impact on this team this year? Albert Almora Jr. or Kevin Pillar?
I'm gonna say Almora, because I think that he's the more ascendant player right now. You know what I mean? Like, he's 26 years old. I haven't heard anything about his defensive metrics declining at all or anything like that. Of course, Pillar takes exception to that. And of course, who wouldn't? As you get older, nobody wants to hear that you're slowing down or whatever. But, Pillar, I think, actually kind of maybe has been profiling a little bit better offensively as he gets older. You know what I mean? Like, I think he did pretty well offensively last year, actually, Pillar.
Yeah, Pillar last year split between the Rockies and the Red Sox. Oh, was that 2020? Yeah, so total, here we are. 2020, he hit 288 with a 336 on base with 6 homers and 26 RBIs and only 208 at-bats. That'll play.
Yeah, he did pretty well last year offensively, and Almora hasn't really kind of done anything offensively since, I think, the Cubs World Series year.
Yeah, so, he definitely got a glove first reputation, but he's hit a couple home runs in the spring, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, supposedly he works really well with Chili Davis, and all that.
There you go. It's that time of year.
Yeah, exactly.
161 in May, you'll be screaming at him.
Right, exactly. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting question, and kind of definitely it depends on your I guess preference, whether it's like the crafty veteran established who what you're going to get maybe at this point, or is there still kind of like some upside still in a guy like Almora?
I think his maximum is like maybe a slightly better Juan Lagares.
Almora.
Yeah. And Pillar has got a little bit of pop. Again, it's valuable to have different guys. Like, you could swap Nimmo out late in the game for defense, but that's probably Almora, right? That would come in. Because I think
obviously
that's why the coach is coach.
Well, if you want to talk historical track record, it's actually probably Pillar. I mean,
well, you don't know that earlier in the game, one of them would have probably pinch hit by then. Now that we have the pitcher hitting, which I think is stupid. Oh my gosh, is that so stupid?
Well, it looks
the only sport with different rules, but don't get me started. I'll say that.
I do understand that. I do understand how it doesn't make any sense to have the different rules. It's kind of like something that was always a little bit quirky and kind of fun when I was, once upon a time, I found it somewhat endearing that baseball had like different leagues and all that kind of stuff.
It's not. I'm wrong. I'm lying. It's there are other sports that have different rules, like in regular season and playoffs. Like the NHL doesn't have shootouts in playoffs. That's one thing that always bothered me too. I always thought.
But to your point, that's league that's league wide.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So everybody deals with the same thing. But I've always been one that I felt like the whole regular season playoffs, both leagues, everything should be uniform. That's just the way I've always felt. And I've always been kind of a National League guy, but I understand they're never going to take jobs away. So they're never going to take the American League and say no DH. That's never coming. So it's either, I know you're a National League guy too. So I think eventually it's going to be full DH. It's just, when they get their expanded playoffs.
I mean, look, I still think that there's ways.
I got my seltzer too.
Oh, good. Very nice.
Lime. There you go. Yep. It's little seltzer, regular seltzer.
Just lime. Yeah, mine is lemon lime. It is lemon lime Bud Light seltzer, but
they're not a sponsor of the program yet.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We got to set that up.
Couple more.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to try to forecast in a way, what's going to happen with all these different roles on the team. And, in many ways you can never predict it because names that you didn't even think of are potentially going to come up and play a role because they got called up in May and they never got sent down. You know what I mean? Something like that. Maybe I'll be using my words when it comes to Gesellman when it's all said.
Right. And you know what? Maybe next week we could talk about some of the kids, see what kids could potentially make an impact this year. I mean, we've mentioned a couple, but maybe a couple of outside the box thoughts. So maybe food for thought for you and I as we go through the next week.
Yep. I'm still very excited to see what happens with Miguel Castro as far as a little X factor for the bullpen.
That's a good call there. And you know what? Another guy that I saw some of them that did not make the team, Sam McWilliams. I think he's got a chance to be a valuable guy out there.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the guys that gets called up earlier.
I bet you he needs to call probably 1 or 2 calls after Gesellman.
Right.
But anyway, and I don't think did they cut Blevins yet? I don't think he's making the team.
That's a good question. I was actually meaning to check that because when you talked about Montgomery, I was curious whatever happened with him.
The numbers were not very good so far in the spring.
Yeah, Mets. So this is from the Daily News. It says Mets bullpen shaping up opening day. A couple of spots still up for grabs. I've reached my free article limit.
So stay tuned for next week.
We'll have to leave it there because that's what happens when you have a paywall. What can I say? So we'll have to tune in next time to find out what happens.
Okay. On that note.
Anyway, for Mike Gansey, I'm James Flippin. And as we like to end every show and say,
let's go, Mets!